Today we are going to learn how to find the limiting reactant when copper 2 sulfate is mixed with zinc, which creates zinc sulfate and copper. So in our problem, we know that 0.6 grams of zinc are used and 10 milliliters of copper 2 sulfate are used, and then 10 milliliters is actually equal to 10 grams, which makes this a whole lot easier. So we start with 0.6 grams zinc, and in order to find the number of moles of zinc, we have to follow the mass to mole formula. So here we have the mass of A, like in the formula, mass of A times 1 mole A divided by the molar mass of A, which is 65.38 grams. Now, if you do 0.6 divided by 65.38, you get approximately 0.0092 moles of zinc. Now we need to do the same thing for copper 2 sulfate. So we have 10 grams of copper 2 sulfate, multiply that by 1 mole of copper 2 sulfate, so we'll call it B, over the molar mass of copper 2 sulfate, which is 159.6096 grams, and we get approximately 0.0627 moles of copper 2 sulfate. Now, after this, we have to use the mole-to-mole formula to find out how many moles of copper 2 sulfate we can make from 0.0092 moles of zinc. So the mole-to-mole formula looks like this: moles of A times coefficient B over coefficient A. That will equal the moles of B. So here the moles of A is 0.0092 moles of zinc, and then we multiply it by coefficient B over coefficient A. So coefficient B is whatever this coefficient is, because copper 2 sulfate is B. So this coefficient is just 1. So we'll put 1 divided by the coefficient of A, which is also 1. So we'll put 1. So this, of course, will just equal 0.0092 moles of copper 2 sulfate. Now we need to do the same thing with the moles of copper 2 sulfate. We need to find out how many moles of zinc we can get from 0.0627 moles of copper 2 sulfate. So to begin, we put 0.0627 moles copper 2, that's a U, copper 2 sulfate, and we multiply it by coefficient B over coefficient A. Well, of course, it's just 1 over 1, the same as this problem. And this will get it 0.0627 moles of zinc. Now, in order to find the limiting reactant, we have to see how many moles we end up with and compare it to the number of moles that we started with. So we started with 0.0092 moles of zinc, and we ended up with 0.0627 moles of zinc. So we'll put a blank there, 0.0627 zinc. Now, if you look at this, 0.0627 is greater than 0.0092. So put the greater than sign right here. This means this is not greater than or equal to. This is like there. Oh, that was a blank. So this means that zinc is our limiting reactant because we used up all of the zinc before we used up all of the copper. Now we'll go ahead and compare the copper 2 sulfate just to check and make sure we did our calculations correctly. So we began with 0.0627 moles of copper 2 sulfate, and then we'll put our box here, and then we ended up with 0.0092 moles of copper 2 sulfate. Now 0.0627 is obviously greater than 0.0092, so copper 2 sulfate is not the limiting reactant. Zinc is the limiting reactant.